Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up because what just dropped in Washington, D.C. is far bigger than anyone expected, and Democrats are already scrambling to contain the fallout. Now, for years, they demanded full transparency. For years, they swore that they had the moral high ground. And for years, they insisted that the Epstein files would somehow destroy Donald J. Trump. Well, today, November 2025, that boomerang finally came back around, and it didn't hit Trump. It obliterated the Democratic Party's top leadership, and the name at the center of it all, the one that they prayed would never surface, is Hakeem Jeffries, guys. Newly released Epstein emails that President Trump himself ordered unsealed, now reveal a secret fundraiser connection between Epstein and Hakeem Jeffries, a post-conviction money solicitation, and an invite-only Obama dinner pitch that ties Epstein directly into the Democratic donor machine. Not from 20 years ago, not before Epstein was exposed. I'm talking about after he was already a registered sex offender. And the most shocking part, guys, these weren't documents that were found in the basement. They weren't leaked by whistleblowers. No, none of that stuff. Democrats themselves demanded that these files be released. They begged for transparency. And now the transparency is shredding their entire narrative, lighting their entire party on fire, putting Jeffries, Stacey Plaskett, and Larry Summers, even the Clintons, under the harshest spotlight they've faced in decades. You're about to see exactly why Democrats are panicking behind closed doors, why CNN reporters are suddenly asking all sorts of questions that they never dared ask before, and why this might be the single worst political miscalculation in modern American history, guys. This isn't just a boomerang. This is a political detonation, and the blast radius is growing by the hour. Now, if you think that the first Epstein file dump was bad, oh, you ain't seen nothing yet. So hit the like button and subscribe. What happened next right after President Trump ordered the full release of the Epstein files? This is something Washington was absolutely not prepared for. So Congress, Democrats included, voted almost unanimously to dump every last document into the sunlight. They thought this move would finally corner Trump. They thought transparency would expose some hidden tie, some smoking gun, but instead, within hours of today's release, the blast radius went straight through the Democratic Party. Not a single damaging Trump email, not a single connection from him to Epstein, nothing. But instead, what dropped was a tidal wave of evidence that was pointing directly at the Democratic leadership. Staffers, donors, strategists scrambling. And behind closed doors, the word panic just doesn't even begin to describe the atmosphere tonight. So the biggest shock of the day, and the ongoing rippling effect going through Capitol Hill right now, is the 2013 email showing Epstein was directly invited to donate to Hakeem Jeffries. Not before Epstein's conviction. I'm talking about 5 years after that point. After he was already a registered sex offender, after the world already knew who he was. A Democratic fundraising firm, Dynamic SRG. They contacted Epstein praising Jeffries as a rising star progressive voice and encouraging him to get to know Hakeem a little bit better. This wasn't a clerical oversight. This wasn't some mass email blast. No, this was targeted, intentional fundraising outreach to one of the most notorious criminals in modern history. And for a man who lectures America about transparency, this revelation couldn't be more devastating. And just when Democrats thought the Jeffries email was the worst of it, well, the files revealed something even more explosive. So buried inside the latest document dump was an invitation sent directly to Jeffrey Epstein for a private, invite-only fundraising dinner with none other than Barack Obama. Let that one sink in, okay? So Epstein, already a convicted sex offender, was being handed access to an elite Democratic donor circle and rising political stars. The email chain shows Epstein was considered valuable enough, connected enough, useful enough to bring into a room with Obama-aligned heavy hitters. And the real kicker, the same outreach pipeline that pushed this invitation is the same one that pitched him to Jeffries. This wasn't a coincidence, guys. This was a coordinated funnel, and Democrats prayed it would never see the daylight. You know, this is exactly why the media landscape is such a mess right now. Information spreads faster than anyone can verify it. Algorithms shove us into these echo chambers, and half the headlines that we see are engineered just to keep us hooked, not informed. This is why I started using Ground News. It's an app and a website that pulls from over 50,000 sources worldwide, and it shows you the bias, the factuality, and ownership behind every story. Just take a look at this story on Ground News about Trump's new healthcare overhaul. It's been covered by over 20 sources, with 60% leaning left and 40% right. Now, one headline blames Trump for destabilizing coverage, while another one is praising him for restoring choice. Ground News lets you see every angle instantly. This is why I partner with them. You get global viewpoints, spot media blind sites, and sharpen your critical thinking. So use my link down below, ground.news/Ron Yates, or the QR code on your screen right now to get 40% off their Vantage plan and unlock every feature. Now, instead of coming clean, Hakeem Jeffries, he's doing what every panicked politician does: deny, deflect, and dodge. Reporters confronted him multiple times with the exact same emails that were found in the new file batch. His response: I have no recollection of this. No recollection of Epstein being invited to donate. No recollection of fundraising outreach tied to any already convicted sex offender. No recollection of the one donor solicitation now threatening to collapse his credibility. His staff refuses to explain how donor vetting worked in 2013. He won't answer why Epstein was targeted. And every time Jeffries tries to sidestep the question, the evidence just becomes even more damning. Because documents don't lie, but politicians hoping to survive a scandal always do. So this is where everything shifts from bad optics to a full-blown political nightmare. House Oversight Chairman James Comer, he has now entered the scene armed with receipts, actual email chains showing Epstein being actively courted by Democratic fundraisers on behalf of Hakeem Jeffries. So Comer said Jeffries' public statements aren't just misleading, they're categorically contradicted by the written record. In other words, Jeffries didn't forget, he got caught. Comer says that the committee is now expanding its probe into potential coordination between Epstein and Democratic operatives. Coordination aimed at influencing political outcomes. And the most chilling part, Comer hinted that more unreleased files mentioned Jeffries by name. Now, this wasn't a one-off mistake. This was a relationship Democrats tried to desperately hide. And so when CNN can't clean up a Democrat scandal, you already know it's bad. Their reporters cornered Jeffries with the same simple question 3 separate times. Do you believe it's appropriate to message Jeffrey Epstein after his conviction? Jeffries dodged every single time, essentially creating an on-air train wreck that was so awkward, even CNN anchors couldn't smooth it over. Now, mainstream outlets are panicking. They're trying to reframe this as a bipartisan embarrassment, hoping viewers won't notice the obvious. Every damaging revelation so far points squarely at Democrats, not at Trump, not at Republicans, not the Democrats, guys. The very people who demanded transparency are now being burned by the very transparency that they insisted on. And the media can't stop it. The documents are out, the receipts are real. Now, close your eyes just for a second, okay? If your Medicare plan gives you peace, you feel it. Now, if it doesn't, you already know. This is why I partner with Chapter. They restore your peace by simplifying your Medicare coverage. Now, one viewer said, after that call, I felt peace for the first time. So let me ask, what would peace feel like for you? Now, most people already know what that feels like after calling the phone number at the bottom of your screen. It's 909-563-8279 or by visiting askchapter.org/Ron. Oh, and listen to what Pat Sable had to say. Thank you for introducing me to Chapter. I am saving $95 a month. Guys, that's some real savings. Now, this is the part that Democrats never want to acknowledge. They did this to themselves. For 2 years straight, Democratic leadership hammered Republicans, insisting that the only path to justice was full release of every Epstein-related document. They framed it as a moral, righteous, and essential objective for public trust. And President Trump, true to his word, signed the transparency order the moment it hit his desk. Democrats thought that they'd finally get their moment. Instead, today's release triggered a political explosion that they cannot control. In fact, staffers now admit privately that pushing this bill was a catastrophic miscalculation. One Democrat aide even told a reporter it's the worst self-inflicted wound since early 2020. They demanded transparency. They got it. And it's burning them alive. And then just when Democrats were trying to distance themselves from Jeffries' fallout, the Stacey Plaskett revelation detonated. Newly uncovered texts show Epstein actively feeding Plaskett questions during a 2019 congressional hearing, questions she then used to grill Michael Cohen in an attempt to damage President Trump. Now, this wasn't passive correspondence. No, this was coordination. This was influence. This was Epstein inserting himself into Democratic political warfare. And Plaskett wasn't some fringe figure. No, she was a part of Jeffries' leadership circle, giving this scandal a direct pipeline to the top of the Democratic caucus. Now, the question is unavoidable. How deep did Epstein's access run? How many Democrats were willingly playing along here? The aftershocks didn't stop with Jeffries or Plaskett. No, the very first political casualty of this new Epstein file dump came crashing down within hours. Larry Summers, Obama's former Treasury Secretary, former Harvard president, Democratic powerhouse. finished. The files exposed a series of emails between Summers and Epstein, including the now infamous message where Summers asked Epstein for dating advice. Within minutes of the documents going public, Summers resigned from multiple positions, triggering a domino effect of panic among former Obama-era officials. Now, if this is the first to fall, who's next? That's the whispered question tonight inside the Democratic circles, because if Summers' downfall is any indication, this scandal isn't stopping at Jeffries. It is climbing the entire Democratic hierarchy. And just when Democrats thought that the fire couldn't spread any further, Chairman Comer dropped the biggest hammer yet. Official subpoenas for Bill and Hillary Clinton. That's right, guys. Official subpoenas for Bill and Hillary Clinton. Not requests, not invitations, subpoenas, demanding sworn testimony about their Epstein connections under a Trump Justice Department. Refusing to comply isn't symbolic. It carries teeth. Comer made it clear. If the Clintons try and stall, they'll face the same treatment as Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro. Criminal contempt charges. And Democrats already know that this is not some empty threat. The Clintons have already postponed their depositions multiple times. But now that Jeffries, Summers, and Plaskett are exposed, every delay looks like panic. Every silence looks like guilt. And every newly released file raises the stakes. Now, here's the twist that no one in the Democratic Party saw coming. The part that turns this entire scandal from embarrassing to catastrophic. After years of media hysteria, after endless hearings, leaks, and conspiracy theories, the new Epstein files show zero emails, zero communications, zero wrongdoing tied to President Donald J. Trump. Nothing. Instead, the documents reveal Epstein was the one that was obsessed with Trump, writing about him constantly, jealous of his success, trying desperately to insert himself into Trump's orbit. Even former Attorney General Bill Barr testified under oath that prosecutors found no evidence linking Trump to Epstein in any criminal way. The narrative that they built for years had just collapsed, and the irony, their accusations only highlight and spotlight their own corruption. Now, behind the scenes, Democrats are imploding. Internal leaks describe frantic late-night calls, emergency strategy meetings, and donor networks demanding answers. Some strategists, they want Jeffries to issue a public apology. Others say apologizing would confirm guilt. Some want to blame the fundraising firm. Others want to ignore the story entirely. The fractures are widening by the hour. Donors are terrified. Staffers are whispering. Leadership is split between damage control and outright denial. And with President Trump now calling for full accountability, full cooperation, Democrats know that they're backed into a corner, because this isn't some one-off embarrassment. This is a pattern. And every newly released file from today's document dump, it pulls them deeper into a crisis that they just can't spin away from. Now, what's becoming undeniable here, painfully undeniable, is that Epstein didn't just stumble into Democratic politics. He targeted Democrats, and Democrats opened the door. The newly released files show that after his conviction, Epstein funneled his donations, communications, and political influence attempts almost entirely toward Democratic lawmakers and operatives. Why? Because he found access. He found opportunity. He found people that were willing to take the meeting, accept the invitation, engage with the emails, and yes, accept the contributions. These documents reveal a coordinated pattern of outreach pipelines, fundraising invitations, and even messaging assistance. And this destroys the media's old narrative that Epstein's connections were mostly Republican. The truth is now black and white, and Democrats are terrified of where this pattern leads next. Now, all of this is unfolding under the leadership of President Donald J. Trump less than a year into his historic return to the White House. And politically, the timing just couldn't be any worse for Democrats. The Epstein revelations hit right in the middle of Trump's major legislation push, border reform, tax restructuring, and judicial appointments. The GOP is energized. Donors are emboldened. Voters are paying attention. Meanwhile, Democrats face a crisis that threatens their 2026 midterm map, their fundraising networks, and their ability to claim the party of ethics mantle. Every new file released today chips away at their credibility. And the more Democrats scramble, the stronger President Trump's message becomes. He kept his promise on transparency, and now the truth is finally out. And now we arrive at the question Democrats are terrified to ask out loud. Can Hakeem Jeffries survive this? The leader of the Democratic caucus, the man that they promoted as their future, is now tethered to a convicted sex offender through emails, invitations, and fundraising pipelines that they swore never existed. The Democratic base is shaken. Donors are furious, and leadership trust, it's evaporating by the hour. President Trump's allies are already calling for a full probe into every Democrat Epstein communicated with, not just Jeffries. And after today's bombshell document dump, nobody knows what tomorrow's release might expose. That uncertainty, that fear, that unanswered question may be the final blow, because the Democrats' reckoning has only just begun. Hit the like button and subscribe.